Hello everyone, it's another round of closed playtesting for Vanguard, so we figured we'd fire it up and let you know our thoughts. If you caught the last podcast, we mainly covered off the decision by CCP to shelve the previous work and double down on the extraction gameplay, and the too long didn't watch verdict was we didn't really like it. In this edition we have the Euro Squad. I'm joined here by Possum and Peakaboo, again seasoned vets from the First Strike days, to talk more specifically about the build and our thoughts on it. So, bearing in mind it's early days with only 2 semi-complete points of interest, what were your guys' first impression?
Well, I'd start. Well, it's definitely obvious with this build that what CCP is trying to do is to nail down the basic game mechanics for the first time. Um, while the gameplay footage that you see may not be as exciting to see, I would congratulate CCP on nailing down the movement mechanics, which are way better than they used to be in the past. And so is shooting improved. The core mechanics of the Vanguard are now where they should have been for years, and playing this time around felt actually really nice, considering the amount of fixes that it brought over. There's a lot of good things, in my opinion, that have come with this build. However, there's a lot of bad things, but I don't want to get too ranty. But yeah, first impressions for me were pretty good. Like the core of the game was pretty good this time around, I would say.
Yeah, the whole build was more fleshed out. You could see certain improvements. For example, what I liked especially was that the fuse boxes on the treatment plant got realigned. So you had one fuse box that was outside of the midsection of the treatment plant. So that was a really nice addition. It allows for a more tactical approach if there was a situation, if the area is contested, for example. And yeah, overall, okay. The gun, I didn't like the actual improvements or like the changes on the gun. That's just me, skill issue. Okay, but overall, okay, yeah. I don't share the vision they are going for with this map, but for internal test development or purposes, I mean, they're much better or in a better way than in March.
Well, I find that with the new situation they've got like kind of 2 POIs that's kind of very much focused on the content is the PVE here. We've got it's enemies, it's waves of enemies, kind of respawning as you kind of like trigger certain events, like you mentioned with the shooting the kind of locks kind of style things. And I find that has been the challenge to me to see the vision when there's leaning on this PVE side of things, but we don't have that believability in the NPCs. It's really kind of like basic in terms of like both the behavior of the NPCs and the method of which they're presented to you in terms of that kind of like here's another respawning wave and another respawning wave. Do you find like if they'd gone for more like a structured approach like they did with the new player journey, do you think that would have been more like engaging?
For new players, yeah, yeah, because if you don't have any tangential like involvement with Eve, this was a good start for new players to get some vision into Eve. Like when you looked out of the pipe and there was this MCC carrier exploding in the background, just as environmental storytelling. It introduced the mining tool as bolt cutter or infiltration tool, which was absolutely cool. The last section where you had to defend an area from different waves of NPCs was okay. Nothing special, but it added so much for a new player experience or for retaining new players in this game.
I would say that the CCP is trying to perhaps get rid of the NP, I would say, in some way. Because if you look at the difficulty of those POIs that you have, they are kind of in the middle. You know, they are supposed to be hard when you're playing solo, but should be not that difficult when you're playing with squads. That's what we tested out yesterday with Dan and a few others, is that if you have a few people on a POI, you're just going to move through it easily. But if you're a solo player, it's a bit of a challenge, but like not in this way of, oh, this thing is just too hard, I'm just going to not engage with it. It's like there's plenty of cover, there's plenty of interactivity in those POIs. So perhaps it's trying to lean into the natural development of you as a player more. That's been very obvious for me with this one.
Well, I find the POIs, the PvE is something to be solved. With the static nature of their locations and the way that you've got the kind of respawn that's very obvious in terms of coming down from the drop pods. I think like you say, as a solo player, you can actually do it if you're just kind of methodical about it, if you kind of like carefully proceed in there. And I think that's the challenge for me to get the enjoyment when it's something that is so solvable, as it were.
I would say that this will only work if there's a bunch of those points on a map, right? If it's only like 3 POIs on this map, you would just get tired after like 2 rounds. But if there would be like a bunch of those places and they would differ between matches, that's possibly something where this game could be really good at. But from what we've seen, yeah, by the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, you're just gonna get pissed off at this POI.
Yeah, I guess it depends how quickly they can churn out new maps. Whether this is a case of because obviously this is the first one we've seen since October, and I don't know when they kind of started work on it, but it's it's still kind of early days. So once they're up and running, like how quickly could they get new maps and variability in those maps?
I would say even variability and enemies, right? There's spawn locations, there are weapons of choices. That sort of stuff could also make a difference long term.
I think you're kind of highlighting how early on we are in terms of like with the decision to kind of like scrap some previous weapons or rework the core, and again like all the kind of maps complete redesign. We're still very early days, and it's difficult for me to kind of see the vision when we are so far along, but also so back to basics again.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, I understand that they had to revamp some stuff, but at the moment it seems like a step back from older like Carrion Solstice stuff that was good. Of course, there was a need to improve it, of course, but I don't know.
Well, I find like Carrion to me was kind of very atmospheric as well. Like it was well designed in terms of like the aesthetics of it, as well as like kind of enjoyable to kind of play in that kind of descending down to the core and the kind of like the fear of like other players being nearby and knowing they're it's them against you. It's no kind of like alliances back then.
Yeah, for me the core in Carrion was like it screamed so much environmental storytelling. It introduced you as a new player. It introduced you to like replaceability of life or the disregard of any use of life besides any like using it for the empires. You got no worth, and it just introduced you into this vast universe, like the middle area in the carrier. The middle area, the core area in the carrier map was like so atmospheric, and I missed this in this current map design. It's like too replaceable. Everything looks like too. It's good to randomize the POIs, I guess. Like you said, if you wanna add more maps quickly, but I don't know. The carrion atmosphere was just more Evish or more Eve Online style, like than this actual map that we have, the Extraction one here.
For me, I'm kind of torn apart, to be honest, because on one hand, I do feel, playing since I think it was March 2024 when I first played on Carrion with you, Peakaboo, just running around the core, just pretty much churning out contracts left and right. That was incredible.
Yeah. Good
I do understand the need to simplify things and then start off from something that will work long term. Carrion was great, and I would love to see it back. But with this map, I hope that the changes that are being made on the technical aspects of the game will ensure that this experience is easily interchanged and built upon. Carrion was a great map. It was very atmospheric, but this new map is very modular. And what I will say is that the difference between this map and the previous one is that this appears to be just a sort of Mordus Legion compound in the middle of space somewhere that you're just attacking for resources. Carrion was this sort of exploration-ish extraction map that was there for ages that we loved, and now here you have to take down a few Mordus Legion compounds, and I wouldn't say that I hate it. It's just that the change in direction appears to be very, very late, I would say. Like, it's a little late to see the Carrion go out, Solstice go out, But on the other hand, I do appreciate that, hey, if those changes are technical changes that will then help the game long term, fair enough. Because, going back to the Dust days, right? Dust was very good, but on the technical aspects, it was just horrible, as we've all heard many times over. If they do things right with Vanguard and, it's modular and it's fun and it's easy to develop for them, fair enough. But bring back Carrion. We need to see Carrion back as
Please
a
bring back
special
the
map
spirit
for us.
of Carrion. Yeah, I mean, people complained it was a wreck and there's only like wreck parts and so, but it had so much atmosphere. You cannot tell me that if you entered the core area, for example, there was so this ominous everything like Sometimes I don't know. Somehow I have fond memories of installing a broadcast node in this old map in Carrion, then like opening 3 locks in a container. I don't know. I know that I'm too like nostalgia naive in seeing the Carrion and Solstice, they were perfect. But for me, like Carrion and Maelstrom, for example, were perfect for delivering atmosphere in the game.
I think that's a good point in terms of like the tension is what was missing from Nemesis. That's what they felt was like. That's why they've kind of done all the kind of the clone changes and other aspects as well. Like it was kind of missing the tension, but I feel like they're kind of missing a big portion of that was the map design in terms of the atmosphere and the fear it kind of instigated in you.
Yeah.
I think what Carrion did the best out of all maps that we've seen so far is that you didn't need a manual for Carrion, right? You would understand that swamps are the risky area, and there was that area in the wreckage, I think up north, where you had a boss, and you would, within like 20 minutes, you'd understand the full map, and you'd know if you want to see players, you go to the core, and you would naturally move towards there anyways because of the resources, because of contracts. I think CCP nailed the design for Carrion in that sense that you didn't really need to learn it, right? With Solstice, it was a bit all over the place with too many POIs and, complexity with verticality and that sort of stuff. Carrion was more flat and you would naturally move towards the core, which we all loved. So,
Yeah. Well, Solstice was more leading you to just stray through the coast, in my opinion, because there was guaranteed that you would find anyone camping the coast.
Solstice was sometimes disappointing because you'd run into some area and you'd think, oh, I'm going to find a player there. You wouldn't. With Carrion, you'd know where the players would be every single time. You go to the core, you're getting PvP. Whether you like it or not, you're getting PvP at the core.
Yeah.
If you run around on the outskirts, yeah, it was empty and felt empty in some ways, but then you would see a player jump out of a pod, right? Because they respawned, and because the spawn areas were like way out, if you remember that. You would see a player, and you never really knew whether that player was new and just spawned in and wasn't much of a threat, or somebody more advanced that was just running to do a contract on the outskirts or just trying to camp new players. I think the tension of not really knowing what you're putting up a fight against made sure that you were always checking your footsteps before you entered an area.
I think Carrion had the winner takes all kind of setup. The contract system they had. Other players' resources were your means to get additional money. To complete contracts, kind of like do things kind of quickly. They were the kind of one of the best sources of it. Whereas with the current setup, and this is by design, you can't possibly take all the equipment here. I'm having to leave all this kind of loot stuff because my pockets are full basically, and so there's not that kind of tension. There's not that winner takes all. I can happily leave someone alone because what they're going to grab that I had to leave behind anyway.
Yeah, I would say that reducing the inventory size to basically minimal, and that was expanded on from the last build, remember. You still kind of go in, grab your pockets full of stuff, and then you extract with it, and then you realize, oh, that wasn't really needed for crafting because you want the sniper rifle or something else, right? We are back with the same issue that we had in Nemesis, right? Where people would just deploy, complete a contract for the what were they called? Expeditions, right? You would complete a stage of an expedition, go on the map for 2 minutes, and then just extract. You have the same issue here, and that's exactly what we were doing yesterday, right? We would just go in. Oh, my pockets are full. Oh, sorry, gotta extract. It's like, no.
And that's the thing with the way they've decided to design the loot table as well. It's just it feels like they're adding friction, not fun. There's just so many like steps to get all the necessary materials like to craft a gun, rather than having kind of more value in the game, in the match itself. You're looting weapons, you're looting things of more value. That means that there are high stakes involved.
Yeah, what I will say is that the issue that I had yesterday when playing is that I just grabbed a bunch of stuff, I extracted with it, and I'm like, oh, I want to craft a new gun with this. And it's like, oh, that's not the right stuff. And I'm like, well, what is that stuff used for? And I'd click through like the crafting menus and try to find the use for those items. And I'd be like, oh, that. So I just bought a pocket full of nothing, right? there's too many items in the game. I would say, like you end up just going out with full pockets, and you realize half the time you actually like need to ensure that what you're bringing is actually useful.
Yeah, I'd say it's too many items and too many icons as well that you can't really discern exactly what you need. And certainly, early days, but there's no kind of quality of life features in terms of like being able to like kind of pre-flag up, okay, this is the component I need. So that can be like highlighted when you go into your, when you see a loot box, basically, when you kind of like mouse over and you get to see the contents.
Like a wish list.
Exactly, yeah. You've got a shopping list,
Yep.
like satisfactories. When you can actually specify like the kind of like things you need, and like that helps you know exactly what to do next.
Also, it would help if you could in your warbird use the more stackable items. Because now they are stacked like 12 units or 12 individual units, and there should be more just to not clutter your inventory so much.
Yeah, I think it's to me like it's kind of the setting in terms of like on the small scale. I want to be able to kind of like set up loadouts and kind of like load on that kind of basis. Having this kind of bespoke every time I have to kind of like craft a loadout and deploy with that. It's not what kind of appeals to me.
And to be honest, at least on mine, it feels like a chore with the crafting system, the entire crafting thing, right? You don't feel like you're getting better with the gear you get half the time, because I mean you're gonna lose it if you don't get a clone in time, right? So that high risk with relatively low rewards, right? Because you're gonna go through a few crates and you're gonna realize, oh, there isn't really anything on this map this time around. But I've deployed with my best gear, so now you have to make sure that you extract, and that doesn't feel like fun to me, to be honest.
I find the current setup, I was playing over the weekend for this live playtest, and it was my meta was deploy in straight away and try and get your Nexus data, get the amount you need to buy a second clone. If someone's already kind of pre-looted it and like it's just pretty scarce on the map, just extract, because you've grabbed a pocket full of things anyway. It doesn't cost you anything to deploy or to extract. Try and just try the next match, try the next way, because if you're bringing anything that's taking you so long to get the materials for, like say that kind of option to kind of clone straight away means that is you're kind of incentivized to just get in and get out quickly. Like not as what I want to be doing in the match.
And also risk versus reward in the maps. Something that hasn't been talked about anywhere that I see is that now you need Nexus data to buy a clone instead of a biomass that you had.
Yeah.
And the thing with Nexus data is that you need 1,000 units of Nexus data, which isn't that hard to get. It's a few crates on the map. But you can only buy one clone per match. And now biomass is used strictly for healing. And I'm not sure what you think, guys, about this change. I'm sort of in between. I'm not sure what to think of it. Technically it's good, because sometimes micromanaging your biomass was a bit annoying at times, but on the other hand, like I feel like removing the extra utility from biomass now made it kind of like another thing that you have to keep track of at all times, especially in those early minutes of a match.
I like the managing biomass for cloning, clone bank, and the health, to be honest. Because you had to not always, but you had to see, is it better to get a clone for the squad, or is it better to just heal up in case you are expecting some gunfights? Now with the data nexus is okay, but I think it's like 1,000 units just for this playtest. I think CCP doesn't want us to have long sessions. They are like expecting us to do the point of interest, do the mission on just extract, like focusing more on like smaller sessions and respawning, extracting, respawning. So I can understand the 1,000 or the aspect of 1,000 data nexus, but if they keep data nexus in the game for the alpha, I would think it would be better for another mechanic.
I find like it's that you don't get a clone to begin with. I think locking weapons behind. Oh, see, this is a good example. This is what some new players' experience is going to be in the game, because I've just seen them deploy and I've got a sniper rifle and they know I don't have a clone, so I'm going to be like, well, let's just kill this guy. And it's like, it's not having like absolutely no clones, no backup. You load. Let's say this person just loaded in with their best gear or whatever, and they're just being eventually picked off by me. It's like, well, that's going to be a shitty experience that they can't. There's no counterplay to that because they've just spawned in, and like I say, it's the kind of obvious inertial dampeners that are just a beacon saying, here I am.
But again, this could be due to CCP's intention that this playtest is supposed to be just drop in, do the 2 POIs, and then extract. So I don't know if they keep it in the alpha, it would be a bad choice to spawn without a clone.
Also, the change that's here is that you no longer buy clones for your squad; you only buy clones for yourself.
Yeah, that's I don't like this change because it was always like everyone could use the clone. You could be like communicate within your squad. Take the clone, you are a better shot, or take the clone, you can do this mission better than me, and just some biomass.
Yeah, that's the thing, because you have no way of helping your teams. There's no option to even to in the same way when you queue up, you can do like lobby or solo. There's no option to say like, okay, we're gonna do shared clones for this squad or we're not. It's that inability to do that means that even if you had extra biomass or extra data, Nexus data, you couldn't actually buy a clone to kind of like buy back your friend.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would say that's a really bad change because back when we used to play on First Strike, it was really cool to see. For example, we had this situation I think so many times where, for example, I would be inside of the core doing some missions, and then for example, Peekaboo would say, "Hey, can you grab me a clone? Because I might just die in a sec." Or, "Hey, do we have enough clones for this section? Hey, can you take this clone? Because you're gonna be better than me, and just buy me a clone before, and the match is over, so I can redeploy." I think that really brought in the sense of team play, right? You were working towards a shared goal, and you had the clones as a currency. Sometimes your mate would take your clone just so he does, for example, deals with a player. But also you could be helping out your best mates on the squad by, just ensuring that there's plenty of clones while you were doing something else on the map.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's a challenge with the current setup of like extraction shooters in terms of like squatting up with randoms and like you could just be. I think as well that's why I think they've removed team killing squad damage in this. You can just like if you spawned in and you were random and you lost your gear straight away, that would be kind of a very like depressing situation.
Yeah, and I mean it's an interesting change because on one hand, like those POIs really want to make sure that you work with some mates in a squad together, but on the other, you can't really help out your squad. You can only help out with your firepower. Well, I mean, you can also help out a down teammate, right, with some biomass, but you can't really be the logi. And that on First Strike, the unintended the unintended thing that came out of the clone system for squads is that you could be a player that would just make sure that there's plenty of ammo, plenty of grenades, plenty of that energy ammo, and you'd have your two other mates on the squad just doing the actual hard tasks.
Yeah, that's the thing. At this stage, everyone has to be a slayer. Basically, there's no kind of support work. There's no like kind of scanning and there's no say map pings and like resupplying ammos and stuff like that. And again, like it's early days, but it's TCP's decision to be early days because this project's been going for a while, and again, it's their kind of decision to reset, which means that all these kind of things we want kind of added to the game of kind of like different ways to play is still far off.
I mean, to be honest, half of those things that we've kind of developed as our own meta were kind of unintended, right? And it's kind of sad that CCP sometimes doesn't recognize that we have created our own meta within Vanguard already, and they make a change and they break it. And it's been quite a while since we've kind of had this thing where CCP would change something and we'd be like, "Oh, yeah, you guys have broken this. Can you fix it?" Because we were actually reliant on that, and that made the game fun. And like CCP would just respond with no response, and then the change would stay.
Yeah, I was gonna say it has been frustrating at times in terms of like you can have kind of emergent strategies that were quite fun and interesting. Like in the core, in the First Strike kind of build, you could just drop items. Like you have a broadcast node. Well, you don't want to lose that if you're killed, so you could actually just like drop that somewhere hidden near the core. Do all the switches, and then come back and pick that item up, and then finish the mission. Knowing that if someone had killed you in the meantime, you'd still have a chance to kind of reclone and get in. But that was kind of killed off with some of Levi's handiwork in terms of like spawning in like hundreds of boxes, crashing the server, nearly crashing the server, and it's like, well, okay, we're going to make sure they all get wiped after a certain amount of time. It wasn't like, let's set it so that players can only drop a couple of items. It's like, nope, it has to be heavy-handed. Everything disappears after 5 minutes. I think to head off some potential complaints I might have in terms of like comparing open versus closed test, but when we had the kind of VIP tests, when kind of the project first went live and we were able to kind of like join those kind of insurgency matches or kind of self-organize and have a reason to kind of squad up or team up or to fight against each other, those were kind of great moments that people keen to do, and we've really struggled to either get people like motivated enough to join at the same time, or that there's enough game for us to test for that to be worthwhile. I mean, when we're kind of playing this with 2 POIs, relatively small map, and it's really difficult to drum up that kind of interest.
Yeah, to be honest, that's been the thing that I've been wondering for the longest time, at least on my end, is that when you were playing, for example, during Groundbreak or Nemesis, especially after a few days, it was really hard to find other people playing, and I'm not sure if it's just because there weren't that many people playing. It feels like there's been a bunch of people playing this, right? Especially with like, if you go through social media and stuff like that, there's people talking about this game. It's not like it's completely unknown to the wider audience. But it feels like those maps are just empty like 99% of the time. Even on a public test, you're going in and you're not seeing much.
I say I've added this footage in because it's actually the most populated game I had all weekend. I think I got 3 kills in the end. Yeah, a bit of a comparison. But again, it's just this. We kind of talk about the map design. So this map is what I feel is kind of like very artificial in terms of, okay, well, we're going to put this point of interest this far away from this thing, and this it's all kind of like Vanguard asset pack style, kind of like plotting things down. And I just, like, I mean, some people may like it, but I think to me it's kind of too gamified. It's too like, I want it to be kind of an immersive experience, but I find that again, like the barracks being completely overwatched by cliffs and hills where you can just snipe inside seems like a bad design if you're trying to do a fortified compound.
I would say that it's not an issue that, the map is bad, right, per se, because, asset-wise especially, the assets are great, but the location itself feels superficial. As you said, you wouldn't really build a complex where there's a hill completely unprotected, where you could just sit down with a sniper rifle and just have a go at it.
I'm wide open here in terms of, some could obviously take a pop at me, but I'm sat up here with a shield or 2 shields even, so I could really kind of pop that and like slink away. So yeah, like it's not particularly balanced at this stage.
Placement of the POIs is just the POIs per se. If you look at them individually, they could offer a lot. Like if they are fleshed out and everything, but it's just the placement of everything that feels so like I mentioned earlier feedback. It was like just uncanny valley, You don't feel, and Karen, I had this consistency, or I felt the consistency while exploring the map, or Solstice or Maelstrom, whatever. But on this map, it's like, okay, it's good for randomizing things if the layout randomizes for public playtest or something, or for the alpha. But I don't know. In this playtest, it feels like too random to cobble together, without like trying to sound like not appreciative of CCP's work. But this map is uninteresting for me. It doesn't speak to me,
Yeah.
Like the POIs, they can be they could be like tactical, good for insurgencies if you work with them. But in a great sense of PvE, I don't feel it. I don't know. I don't want to be negative to this game or this current idea, but it doesn't speak to me, statistically and like on the Eve style of things.
Yeah, from what I understand, they've scrapped kind of carrion, or at the very least kind of benched it because of like the difficulty of kind of navigation in terms of like kind of clipping on train and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And I find that's like that was a problem, but it was very much a first impressions problem. Like once you kind of like learn the map and you kind of learn the routes, you learn what is navigatable terrain. You can kind of like you pick your path and you know how to thing it. But certainly as a new player, you're like, why am I kind of clipping on this these random rocks and stuff like that? So I can understand where they're coming from, but my perspective would be make that not people's first impression of the game. Make that a PvP focused map that people can enjoy. That people who are gonna no life the game, or people that are gonna be up at all kinds of the hours trying to chase contracts.
Yeah, and what I will say is that Carrion did something really well, and that is the place felt real.
Yeah.
Even if you had like a random group of NPCs somewhere, if you think about it, it totally makes sense, right? For example, on Carrion, you'd always find 2 or 3 NPCs inside of the cave, which leads to the core area. It's one of those leading areas, and it's just like a cave with like some loot inside of it and all that sort of, and a clone bank, right? It felt like a real place, and it makes sense why you would see some enemies there, right? They were protecting something, and on this map, it just kind of feels like everything is just thrown around with like no real thought put behind it. It just, as Peekaboo said, it just feels superficial and just too gamified.
I find as well the range of NPCs they had in terms of they were just workers effectively, like some like kind of basic guards, and their lack of lethality made sense to me again in universe. They weren't like Mordo's leading kind of special forces, like they're gonna be soldiers, gonna be good. That wasn't the case with the NPCs said before. So I understand, like again, that kind of takes me out of the immersion when I've got these kind of really dumb Mordo's Legion I'm facing.
And those Modus Legion are way more deadly than workers, right? Because those guys do pack a punch if you just come on the without thinking much about it. Like they can really knock you out quickly. I've had that happen a few times during this test. I was destroyed.
Well, I find it quite a binary experience. Like you either take them down piece by piece, or like they spawn behind you and you like die pretty quickly. But yeah, I think like the kind of NPCs has been the challenge meal in terms of like it's in Carrion, Solstice, and the previous tests. NPCs were the environmental hazard. They were the thing that kind of you alerted other players to your presence. So that's why you choose to engage, not to engage. In this game, there seems to be no reason to just not engage straight away. Like again, it's not a very particularly PvP focused experience. Like yeah, that's my take on it.
I mean, it is a different environment, though, to be honest. Let's make that clear. With VIP tests, we tend to be friendly towards others because, like yesterday, I was shooting somebody and then I realized, oh, it's Danny. So we had a chat and I was like, oh, you're not on my squad. We're going to have a chat. We're going to be friendly. And then we just went part ways. But I don't even think if every single player was hostile to one another, whether that would make a difference here, because everybody's kind of just wandering around, shooting things, extracting quickly. I think what you would find on an open test with this is that players would join in, run around, get their pockets full. They'd realize, oh, I can't grab any more stuff. They would extract, and then you join a mostly empty session. Yeah, we're back to square one with not enough players on the map.
Oh, that's the thing. Is a design choice to kind of like limit the PvP or not incentivize the PvP. Like I say, there's no PvP. Sorry, there's no reason to kill someone when I can't even take their stuff because either my pockets are full or they don't drop their weapon.
And on the other hand, you're not really sure if you're dealing with a seasoned player that's gonna shoot you or if it's gonna be a newbie. I tend not to shoot people on first sight because maybe it's a newbie and I don't want them to feel the same way as I did when I first played Vanguard, where I deployed, lost 2 clones in like 3 minutes, and I basically rage quit the game first time. So I tend to be nicer, but even if I didn't want to be nice, as you said, my pockets are full already. Your stuff's not that valuable to me anyway.
I think that's the challenge that they instead of improving like the onboarding of players, they like say disincentivize the PvP, and then therefore it can be less engaging for the players who enjoyed first strike gameplay.
Yeah, but I mean my pockets are full, so I'm going out of here. You're not changing my mind. I'm not gonna PvP anybody. I'm just gonna swiftly run away and extract. And as you see in that gameplay footage I'm seeing, right, you've done a few sides that your pockets are full and you already have to think what you're grabbing, what you're leaving behind. That's not the sort of experience I'd want from this game long term, especially. It's just not fun to just run in and extract and sometimes shoot things, but not for long because again your pockets are full. At least the one thing that changed for the better is the ammo situation. I think that's a really good change.
Well, they have
That's a good
gone.
idea.
There's a complete kind of 180 in terms of like having that scarcity, and now it's like everywhere basically.
Yeah.
But they removed the death crates, the death ammo crates. So okay.
I find as well, like if you're using alternative weapons, there's plenty of kinetic around, but there's not a lot of anything else really, or certainly you need to search the crates for shotgun and sniper rifle.
I would say that's a pretty good balance. Like, personally, at least for me, right? If you're crafting the better weaponry, right, like the sniper rifle that you have, as the gameplay shows, it's pretty good at deleting players off the map. So for me, it feels kind of good to see that you kind of have to work harder for your specific ammo type. Meanwhile, if you're just a new player or somebody that just wants to deploy, grab some stuff and leave, you have this gun that's not gonna run out of ammo quick. Because if you have players with better weaponry that can just mow through you, and you realize that while running up to them you have a single magazine left, you're not gonna have a good time with this. Now that the Reaver has pretty much no ammo problems, but the other weapons do, I would say that this is the sort of experience that I would expect from the extraction game mode, where your first gun, the cheap, dirty SMG, is pretty terrible at things, but it's plenty with ammo, and you can just mow through things if you're careful, and if you put some chips in it can be quite a good weapon. But if you're on a hill and you have a sniper rifle, you can still just take me down in 2 shots and not worry about what I thought I'm going to do to you. As a result of that, you have to worry about your ammunition. I would say that's pretty good balancing. Not perfect, obviously, and I would say that making the NPCs be ammunition spawn just now isn't the greatest change. But I would say it's a good step. Good first step towards balancing things out, where the good weapons are kind of scarce. You have to work hard to get them, and then you have to make sure that you're not running out of ammo quick. Meanwhile, a new player has a gun that's basically never going to run out of ammunition as long as you pick it up from the dead enemies. I like that change, personally.
That makes sense. What I find though is that like what I don't like is locking out entire categories of weapons to other players in terms of like you're a new player, you loaned up this for the first time, you'll never chances are you can play the game with never actually getting to use the sniper rifle or the shotgun or stuff like that, because the entire classes of weapons are hid behind that, where you need to loot them first, you loot the materials and blueprints to create them first. So I would like to see some kind of militia variant or some kind of default weapon of all the categories. And then you're kind of incentivized to loot things to make that up to the power of a standard edition.
I would say what could be changed and make that experience better is just to remove the amount of stuff that you have to pick up from those sites. If it was quite a limited selection of things and you could easily craft those new weapons, then just slightly tweak the ammunition acquisition for those better weapons. I would say that would be a pretty good balance. You have to do 1 or 2 deployments to get those better guns, and then you can have your own fun. But I wouldn't keep it this way, where you have to basically keep a notebook full of stuff that you need for, say, the sniper rifle. That's pretty terrible for me.
Why? What I don't understand is why they don't bring back the queue system. Like you just put the craftable stuff that you want in a queue, and once you get the material, it just automatically starts the queue and producing all the stuff that you wanted, or the crafting.
Yeah, I did prefer that system in terms of, like you say, you could just load it up, and then as soon as you got the materials, it starts producing.
I mean, it was a little bit like if you didn't find the material, your whole queue could be stuck. It wouldn't move. It had some disadvantages, but overall, for this system that we have right now, a queue system, when you automatically craft the item once you have the materials, would be absolutely good.
Yeah, and you could use the same like wheel UI that they're using here in terms of like that would still be fine. Do that queue up, several at once.
With a small indexing so that you know how many items you are crafting once you have the materials or once the queue starts. It would be absolutely doable.
Again, for me, just get rid of all that unnecessary stuff. Keep the selection quite minimal, because again, even if you have an automated crafting system, you're still gonna look through most crates and find crap.
I think as well, like the whole kind of ammo system, I'm kind of struggling with at the moment in terms of it being kind of separate inventory, and that it's like you have at the moment we've only got like energy ammo and kinetic ammo for the weapons, but you might get weapon ammo variations, and then suddenly you've got like 100 different ammo types, and you're kind of like sorting through exactly what you need, or it's not a kind of a system I like. I think
Yep. Again,
It
there's
just
too
takes
much
away from
stuff.
the immersion, from the urgency of deployment, I think. If you just have to focus on what are you collecting, on what are you looting, it takes away from this moment that you are deployed. You have to be attentive in the battlefield and not like just stick your nose into every crate that you can find, That's like some, I don't know, missed opportunity. I mean, it's an extraction adventure, yeah, okay, but there should be a lot more balancing on being a Vanguard that has like 45 minutes to live, like a walklong that has some purpose besides like being like in salvage storm. I don't know, for lack of better words. So
Yeah, but with the current setup, I'm wondering whether it's part of it is because it's so early on. There's only kind of 2 POIs, but the incentive is to kind of extract fully pockets extract straight away. What we did actually in this match is the command center key card was in the treatment facility, and then we cleared that, and then we went back to the barracks to try and open the vault in in that facility as well. So having those incentives to go across the map and to stay engaged, I think
that's
they
good.
hopefully they will continue to implement, or certainly more overt ways to do that, which would be definitely a good change to do.
Also, one good change that happened is the introduction of a crafter, where you can only bring 4 blueprints to the ground. You spend less time in the menus, which again brings you back to the game.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that, having that meaningful choice of like, okay, these are the only things I can bring in to actually craft whilst I'm there. Though I do find it again, they've kind of done it in a weird way. It's inconsistent in terms of you deploy and you lose, and you don't extract. You lose all of your gear except you get to keep your blueprint crafting recipes you preloaded to your suit, which seems like a very kind of clunky way of doing things.
On one hand, yes, but on the other, I would be very angry if you found 4 blueprints, you deployed with them, and then you lost them. I would say that's just a little nod to those players that would be, kind of in and out. And if you lose some stuff, fair enough. But maybe the blueprints would be nice to keep around. Sort of like the BPO system in EVE Online, right?
Well, I think just
Where
having
you can.
like kind of suit defaults, like if that's something that where they want to go that way, like okay, I'm wearing this suit, it means default, I get this ammo type, this deployable shield, and this additional thing I can craft, and then I can overwrite that with my own blueprints, but or pick in a different way. But having the kind of current system, I think that kind of again that kind of mismatch of like everything's lost on death except it's not lost on death or failed to extract.
Yeah, and they could actually they would introduce new suits to the game by now. You could have different playstyles assigned to suits, right? So, for example, heavy suits could create different heavier ammo types for the shotgun or stuff like that. That would naturally move players towards different suits for different actions, but we still haven't seen a single suit being gathered except the Kaldari Scout.
Well,
The
again,
Galante Scout.
that's the kind of frustration in terms of like going back revising so much of the game, going backwards so far means that all these kind of things, the additional things we would like in the game, again pushed further away or may not be realized. But I find like the moment the kind of current setup we have is there is kind of a lack of cost per death. Like you lose everything on and fail to extract, but if you manage to bank a clone, then you redeploy of all your gear, and to me. That doesn't sound like a very good system in terms of you're kind of incentivized just you bank a clone, and then as soon as you lose that clone, we'll just extract because you get to keep your expensive gun or whatever.
Yeah, that system never made sense to me. I think it's been like this forever, right? You redeploy, you keep the same stuff on you. You should be losing all your stuff, and you'd have to go back to your crate if somebody hasn't stolen all your stuff. Because right now you kind of feel, especially with the clone limits of Nemesis, you kind of felt like, oh, I died. Never mind, my squad got me a second clone. I'm gonna log back in, and I don't even worry about my stuff if somebody has taken my loot or whatever. I still got my best gun on me, so what do I care?
Yeah, because this is a reaction. This kind of change in development course is a reaction to the Nemesis being badly received and that kind of lack of tension. That is ability to respawn, and you're only ever going to lose your gear to disconnects, basically.
Yeah, I can see that they're aiming for some basic fundamental core gameplay. Yeah, I can understand it, but I don't know. This doesn't feel like they're trying to please a too big crowd, and in the end, ending with pleasing no one with this game or with this vision of the game.
I think as the most severe case of dust brain ever recorded in human history, I'll keep that crown forever, I think. I would say that, it's easy to, with those, when you have a time like this where the game's doing not that great, it's easy to think of Dust. And what I want Vanguard to be is not a Dust clone in any capacity. I want Vanguard to be better than Dust. And, the fact that we're playing this on PC and it doesn't run the best, but hey, it's very early on, so the game hasn't even been optimized once properly. So I'll accept that. The thing that my mind goes back to is Dust as an idea of this kind of New Eden universe taken to the ground, and us being there. I would say that Vanguard just has a different spin on that vision of what that experience could be like. My worry is that by essentially trend chasing with this game, right? And
Yeah.
now we feel like the game is turning into Arc Raiders. That this game will never find an audience for itself, because it feels like with the past builds, it felt like CCP was just trend chasing whatever was popular at the time. And after so much time has passed, right, from First Strike, it feels like CCP has never really decided where this game is going. Is it a game for Dust players that just want a new experience? Because if Vanguard was supposed to be the new experience, then it's still lacking in some areas. But the concepts are good, I would say. It's not going to be Dust 2.0. We have to accept that. But hey, as a different spin on the experience of shooting stuff on the planets inside of EVE Online, it's not the worst idea. But then again, those changes that we are seeing just take away from that experience in Dust where you would just deploy, take down a few people, capture a few points, go back. You would upgrade your gear, sit with the fitting system, ensure that your fitting is perfectly optimal for the situation that you're dealing with. Then you would also have the market, right, where you would be able to just play a few matches, then afford a new gear set up for you again, and that sort of stuff. And this experience is heading towards a more generic, I would say, extraction shooter experience. But people playing extraction shooters are not really drawn to the idea of an EVE universe, right? For them, this stuff doesn't matter. For them, it doesn't matter that you see an RDV on the ground somewhere, or there's a turret from Dust setting up on a hill. Those people just want a great game that just feels replayable, feels great to come back to every single day. And Vanguard's not really trying to keep you in that game. If you complete those POIs a few times, that's all there is to the game. Like,
Yeah, but I would beg to differ, because for me, or I think for new players, it would be keeping you in the game. This involvement in EVE Online without being part of EVE Online, like when you would just be affecting things in New Eden. No, doesn't matter how small they might be, but the possibility to have some impact on a bigger universe like EVE or New Eden in this case, it would be so incredible. I think to retain players that just want to be some part in EVE or have some part in the whole overall development or overall happenings in EVE without having to play it, like having the steep learning curve and everything. So PvP, if they would aim for some more like excuse the term, but more like storytelling or environmental storytelling, which is engaging. Like Carrion wasn't the best, but at least it had some storytelling consistency, I think. If they would aim for this one, they would retain a lot of players that would else find a better extraction shooter or better mechanics, more fleshed out mechanics, but wouldn't get this EVE feel what they could get from EVE Vanguard. So it's like I said initially, they're trying to pander to a too big audience who will be just not grateful for the experience because they have things they can compare on a market which are more fleshed out in their opinion. So there won't be anything to keep them in Vanguard. But having some interconnectivity or having some like more things that would point to EVE Online or something, I think they would be more willing to play this game or like being engaged in this game. Much more than like presenting them with this current build.
Well, that's where I get a bit confused in terms of like what the things they have done about the game. There is very little of Eve in this kind of game, and it's like the situation is there's no kind of corporations, there's no way of kind of chatting between games, there's no kind of affiliation, there's no kind of even following the kind of the Four Empires kind of storylines of Eve was kind of pushed out initially because you had the obviously kind of the Deathless storyline. So there is very little Eve feel in this, and like I say, if they could lean on that, they'd probably find more success.
Yeah, and it would be like they wouldn't have to say this is like reminding you of something like Arc Riders, because Arc Riders is Arc Riders. EVE Vanguard should be EVE Vanguard with a clear vision, and not copying some other established extraction thingies on the market.
What I will say is that we have. I'm not sure if you guys have missed it, but the thing that Carrion did really well is that you would read about angels and all those other stuff. You would see like this like crashed ship with like some weird logo. You would see that those enemies kind of have this like specific shape to their helmets and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It all was very telling that there's an universe to this.
Yeah.
If you close your eyes and then started playing Vanguard, and you'd be like, oh, what's that? What do Mordor's Legion do? And that sort of stuff. On Carrion, you had this introduction to a universe done really well.
I feel as well when you've got like an established aesthetic and you've got like kind of that kind of like design language already, CCP certainly in Reykjavik will have that kind of like fully fleshed out in terms of like their design bible or the things they're meant to include. And if you could just kind of follow that, it streamlines the process in terms of we've already had kind of a rework of the suit that they were originally going to pitch, like the Deathless suit that was kind of very angular and with a kind of a white ghost face mask kind of situation going on, which I think was generally pretty badly received. And if they'd again, that's kind of extra dev work, it's extra rework, and it's like if you're saying there's a small team, then they really should incentivize, making those quick wins or having those kind of designs. Because again, the devs have confirmed that the Galente scout suit and the Caldari suit will not be player models, or certainly their intent is to kind of scrap them. And it's like, well, why did you do all this work originally to then just scrap it and not have it as a variant, especially when you've got such a fan following for it?
Going back to Dust days, the thing is that I'm an EVE player because of Dust. I was never an EVE player. I remember the conversation I had in Dust. There was a player that didn't have a helmet on in chat, and I asked him, hey, how'd you take the helmet off? And it's like, dude replied, oh, there's this game called EVE Online, you should check it out. Years later, guess what? I've been doing factional warfare on the Amar side for a few months, and I just had a blast, and I moved to nullsec, all that sort of stuff. I got into the EVE universe because Dust told me to, eventually. Sort of, in this sort of way where I understand the design language, and then, there's that one player that told me, hey, there's this game. I didn't know what EVE Online was when I was playing Dust. Before I played Dust, it was only after I played Dust that I understood, hey, there's a game to this outside. I had no idea there was EVE Online connected to Dust. And when I did, everything made sense. I logged into EVE and I saw, hey, these are Caldari things, right? Because they kind of look like the Caldari stuff in Dust. Perfect. Galente. Perfect representation inside of EVE. Now I understand why it's all gold and stuff, because, they're those religious fanatics and that sort of stuff. Scrapping those suits just makes absolutely zero sense. What suits are going to go in? Mordor's Legion? These guys don't appear in EVE Online until they go into low-sec, null-sec. That's 30 plus hours inside of EVE before you even recognize that sort of stuff. It just makes no sense.
I think I always viewed Dust as the kind of the gateway into EVE in terms of like it's a notoriously complicated game to learn. There's a lot of kind of mechanics and a lot of kind of like kind of social side to navigate as well in terms of but Dust allowed you to kind of like get that foothold into the world, and it's kind of twofold. First, there were people who will never play Eve but just enjoy the aesthetic and want to be involved, or the sci-fi story of it. But also, having that kind of shared design language, like kind of drop suit fitting, that was kind of your foothold. Once you kind of understand the mechanics of how to fit a drop suit, that was your mechanics of how the basics of fitting a spaceship. So it's kind of like it was a complementary product, and you're not one of the only ones who've have gone from Dust to Eve.
Yeah, and it makes zero sense why the visual identity of EVE Online is getting lost in translation here. It's been like this since day one. It's definitely a bad choice, I think, to see that they're moving away from the core identities of EVE for the sake of those rather known factions to the average EVE player outright. It would be much nicer if you just started out as a Galente scout, for instance, and then you had a Galente gun and you would deploy on Galente planets and that sort of stuff. Because, again, it would be a good gateway drug to EVE if you had a fitting system, that sort of stuff. Same story with Dust, yes, but that worked. I see no idea why it's getting scrapped here.
What also was great was the contraband missions, or the contraband mission on the last public playtest. Because that mission allowed you some glimpse. There's someone reacting to your movement on the battlefield. You have to work together, like enabling the stealth emitters so the RDV could land on the ground or hover over the ground. It was a great mission for like showing players there's more to this. There's a broader picture that you're starting to get.
Well, I think as well this like the game has so much potential in terms of like if you were in the situation where you're in in the extraction barracks and you take it over, if you could have like a connected Eve pilot send a shuttle down so to collect you from inside the barracks after you've kind of cleared it, and that's your the exit's kind of locked down, but you've got this kind of way of getting out. And again, that's kind of achievable through both like NPC means, pay a fee, and also having that like kind of real-time connection in terms of a way that both parties are kind of consenting to be involved in. It's like it's active participation. It's not just shipboarding or something ridiculous like that. It's like that ability to kind of interact and kind of cooperate between the games that I think is really interesting.
Yeah, that would be because at the long term, it would sell the game to a broader market. In my opinion, it's the way to go. It would be essential to interconnect this two universe, because no other no other competitor has this vast universe like Eve has, and they should aim for interconnectivity between the two worlds.
I think for me, the best thing that could happen to this game is that it becomes good on its own. And then as you play on, you realize that you can affect things inside of Eve.
Yeah.
So, with the orbital strikes and dust, that's the thing that just keeps popping back into place in the conversations with us and devs and that sort of stuff. That was cool, but that didn't really tell you much. I mean, did you really have any idea inside of Dust that there was an Eve player doing those? Not really. It would be cool if Eve Vanguard was a standalone experience that would be catered towards a wider audience, done carefully well, so that it's just not an Arc Raiders clone at the end of the day, but it's its own thing that would allow you to interact with the EVE universe slowly on those specific terms towards EVE Vanguard, because it's easy that I see in those conversations I'm seeing about this game. It's that half the time just people want, to shipboard and that sort of stuff. It's like, that would piss off EVE players too much.
It would be the right choice. It would be so good, because then, there would be another field in Eve that you would have to adapt to. It would lead to so great mechanics and more meta gaming and everything. I mean, I don't know. I dream about having a good corporation that is focused on having tactical, super chats like Vanguards that are just focusing on tactical infiltration, not looting, just disabling some certain aspect of an enemy corporation or alliance. If this would be possible, is it like boarding a sub-capital or something essential? Or just dysfunctioning the tethering function system for like 24 hours or something. Like this possibility a good Vanguard team could impact some certain aspects and change the tide of war or the tide of battlefield. It would be their way to go for this game, in my dream.
Well, I think the best idea that I read recently in the VIP chats was that somebody suggested moving the anchoring timers in Eve by 2 hours, depending on Vanguard actions.
Yeah,
But
it would be
perfect.
a great start. Perfect, yeah, great start.
Well, I find that the problem is advertising basically though as well. I mean, obviously I don't expect them to advertise Vanguard because it's kind of very early on in the days. But I'm interested to hear you didn't know that Eve players were providing the OBs in Dust 514 because that was like the reason I got into the game in terms of like that the connection between them is something that really inspired me of like wow, this is amazing tech kind of thing back in the day. And I think a lot of people just found the game just through, it's a free to play game on PlayStation 3. That level of advertising was never really there. So a lot of people were starting the game with kind of very little information, and it was a very difficult game to kind of get on to grips with. So I think that was my main concern. It didn't really have a fair shot.
Yeah, I discovered that because it was a free-to-play game on the PS3. Alongside all those demos of different games, there was this free-to-play thing, and it was a full game on PS3 that was for free in 2013. That was special.
But I think like circling back to kind of like the extraction side of things, I'm interested to see what makes Vanguard stand out in kind of let's say kind of a crowded field. I mean, they've certainly previously said no resets, which seems to be like a genre staple of extraction shooters. So, yeah, interested to see if they stick to that.
If they were to do resets, no, I would quit. Sorry.
Well, the thing like Eve players or people of the familiar with the setting, the genre, all that kind of thing would be like up in arms because that's like antithesis to the game itself. But again, it's a genre staple of extraction shooters.
Oh, here's a chance to be different, at least for once.
I think like the inability to loot other players' weapons might be something that enables that, but yeah, it's quite different coming from other games.
CCP has a challenge in making a shooter that not only will be fun to play and an experience that you go back to, but also an experience that does not get destroyed with an update in 6 months' time.
No.
And I feel like this thing that we played this weekend was, for many reasons, a good change. But as a player that was there since the beginning, felt like betrayal in some sense. Because we were led on this idea of Vanguard being this experience, and then it just got completely flipped over. And then we played that build in March. It was just not good. And then you go back in April, and yeah, they fixed some things, but then again, some things were just a complete 180. I don't think it's the time for CCP to be making those huge changes now. They need to lock down what Vanguard is supposed to be, because we go through those conversations every 3 to 6 months when we play those VIP tests, where we just basically rant for hours about how CCP has destroyed the game again with some change. I don't think it's the right time to make those changes again. I think if that's the experience that they're going for, fair enough, but they need to owe it up and move forward with it, because I mean, how many times are we gonna see a reset? That's been kind of going on for a while now, and I don't think anybody expect a reset right now, especially as we're heading on towards alpha, right, and a public release.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that I think has got me. In terms of like CCP advertising, they want to develop this game, but with the community. And then in January, based on directors' letters, they have it signed off that they're doing a kind of a massive rework of the game, and that doesn't get communicated until basically the day before the test. Or for some people, that how they found out that was when they first loaded it up, and you've got no option to deploy anywhere but this new map, and it's like, well, what happened? What have you been doing with that time?
I would say again, I feel like playing the devil's advocate, right? That Vanguard for now was a very experimental title for CCP, where they could toy around with different ideas, and there was no harm done. But as the game is reaching its 3rd anniversary soon, I feel like it's time to stop and decide what this game is supposed to be, right? Because I'm open-minded to those changes and how this experience will evolves. but it feels like some of our feedback gets completely lost in translation. Some of those changes just get made without thinking how they impact our gameplay. And I feel like there's been way too many players that have already left Vanguard because it just keeps changing.
Well, so I guess at that point, kind of closing thoughts about this playtest and hopes for the next one, I guess.
Overall, of course, improvement to the March build. It was okay. That was good from this vision. But it's like, yeah, I don't like the course that or the vision that this current Vanguard is going. So I hope they change it once it's hits alpha. But I don't know. It's not my Vanguard anymore. That is what I'm feeling. But at the same time, I acknowledge that I'm too nostalgic based and just Carrion and Solstice, But yeah, we'll have to see. There's a lot of good improvements, but overall, I think CCP is missing the point what this game should focus on by big time. And there's no changes. Like the fundamental core is just wrong. And I hope they can do it because I will be staying with CCP and Vanguard till the end. But I just hope that we get some basic things right.
Yeah, and I think for me that's the hard part is that had this not been a CCP product, loosely related to Dust, I wouldn't be here. But because I love Dust so much, I'll be here till the very end, and even if it's an experience I don't really like, I'll keep playing it because there's part of me that just really wants to explore planets of New Eden on the ground, regardless of what that game turns out to be. Compared to the March build, there's massive improvements. I really like that ammunition is no longer a scarce resource. I do appreciate that those higher tier weapons are kind of locked out, but I think that there's been too much lockout going on with the amount of stuff that's happening on the ground. With the pretty much it's impossible to manage your inventory now on the planet, even though they've expanded the inventory size. With the amount of stuff that you need to craft weapons, equipment, and chipsets, which are still here. Believe it or not, I think there's just too much stuff in the game to pick up, and that leads you to just go into a match, grab all your stuff you can, then you just extract and rinse and repeat, and we're back at the issue of Nemesis, where you would deploy for 2 minutes. Now, whether I or not I like the change from Nemesis, it's complicated. On one hand, I do understand the change, and I fully support CCP and those changes that they've made. A reset of this game probably will make this game better, and I understand why things were changed in the way that they have been. This map kind of sucks. The traverse on this is much better, yes, but as we discussed, it feels unnatural to play on. It feels wrong to see so much stuff ripped out. But if this will make sure that Vanguard crosses the early access point, and this time it will do it without any delays like we had in the past, sure, fair enough. I'm excited for it. It's not a game for me, I think, as you said as well. I would like this game to be a bit more for me, but I want a lobby shooter at the end of the day, and I think that's not going to change very soon. That I still want a lobby shooter in the EVE universe, but I would say that as much as I haven't enjoyed playing Vanguard up until Nemesis, I've just as much have not enjoyed playing this build, which means that for me at least, the game hasn't drastically changed. There's some changes, there's some negative changes, but the core experience for me has remained largely the same, and it's pretty good. Like the way I shoot things, the way there's people on the map, it hasn't changed. I don't like it, but it hasn't gone off completely off the rails for me. I'd love to see more people on matches, definitely, and that sort of stuff. And again, inventory management and the way this map looks and plays should definitely be changed. But the core experience has been improved, I would say. At the end of the day, it just got lost in translation because of the lack of announcements, the way that it was laid out. It wasn't until we sat with CCPJS that explained to us why those changes have been made that I've calmed down, because that my initial VIP post was just very negative, and that's because I didn't understand why. Now that I understand, I'm more accepting of those changes. But my last thing I would say is that whether this change and development, this new direction, will keep those players that were already pretty dissatisfied with this game for months now.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. Like, yeah, it's difficult part of Vanguard's development. I think the next open playtest will kind of like could make or break it. I think that's going to be in Q3, this kind of Northern Hemisphere summer. So have to stay tuned to see how well that goes. But guys, thanks for coming on today. I think it's been good to actually talk about this build, and yeah, hopefully, we get some more progress. We get some more kind of like listen to that feedback.
Always a pleasure.